welcome to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. I'm Keaton Shaw. Welcome to another edition of the program. And hello, it's a beautiful day. Nice and sunny outside indeed. Hope it's not too hot. I'm joined by my co-host and colleague. He's alongside me in studio, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Good morning.
Morning, Keaton. It's a beautiful morning here in TNT. Traffic seemed to be a lot less this morning. And I guess you could say, well, they still have the usual happenings going on in the country. Not as much bad happened, I would like to say. I guess it's a hell of a thing when you kind of wait with bated breath to see, what's incidents of violence happened today.
Something good actually did happen.
Something good happened?
Something good happened, yes. We woke up today, we see another day, and we're here doing Talking Points.
Well, fair enough. Oh, actually, no, something else good did happen. I almost forgot. The 12-year-old girl, I believe she is out of ICU. So the concerns about her life being in danger, I assume, are...
No, well, her life is still obviously in danger, given the fact that anything can happen anytime. But it's a positive sign that doctors have suggested, okay, we're able to move her out of ICU into any other ward. So, that's good news.
It's good news. Good news.
I'm glad we can actually start with some good news.
I was very happy to hear that because I'm still shocked at the lack of response of towards violence that's inflicted upon children recently, and I'm not entirely sure what to make of it. It is what it is. So thankfully, now the flip side is, and I guess you could say it's good news because the 14-year-old will not be the only surviving family member. The 12-year-old still has her older sister, but they've lost both of their parents. So obviously their life is going to face difficulties and hardships, in the immediate and long-term future. But at least, they have each other.
I hope it doesn't encounter too much hardships in the long-term future. I hope that they have their family on standby to support them. You never know the stories or what comes out of these situations. But immediately, yes, it is going to be extremely difficult. And even if you have a family, they're not always the same as a parent. But at this time, we can only hope that that level of support is there. Anyway, Sean Michael Small, I think we've had a bit of good news. Now we can get into some more serious topics, I suppose, more heavier topics with the dealer review.
Well, our first topic this morning is one that it's giving me a little bit of, frustration because this is not necessarily in a general sense something that's new with regards to where homeowners build their homes and they do it on land that they're technically not supposed to do it. But the twist is that as opposed to being in a flood zone or one of the usual suspects, it's over a heritage pipeline. So the recent spill has happened where residents have built, at least in one case, I think over the spill, a garage, but there's also reports that there are other dwellings or civilian structures at other points of the pipeline within close proximity that was built over it. And now we have a situation where you have an oil spill. Of course, the question is, to what extent did the construction damage the line? But then also you have a situation where, once again now, who is going to be held responsible for this? Because you have a family who can't technically continue living there. At least I don't think that's feasible. But it's not as though they could just afford to move. It's not like they could sell their house and get full market value for it and move elsewhere. That's the point.
I think all parties involved are guilty, be it the residents as well as Heritage Petroleum, formerly Petrochin. They are all guilty. Town and country planning as well as local government is also guilty. Why? There were polls apparently that indicated, red poles that indicated that there were pipelines there. Now, what residents are suggesting, they're admitting guilt over building the pipelines, but what is also being suggested by some residents is that they thought that the pipeline was condemned. It was dead. The thing is, who gave them approval? Because town and country planning is involved, local government is involved, and therefore, we can only hope that they had the requisite approvals. I can only hope so. And I think an investigation should be conducted, and if not, the residents should be charged. Because even though I am sympathetic to the fact that they've probably lost their homes and not necessarily their belongings, but their homes because they can't occupy there again, if you are guilty of doing something that is not right or in the lines of the law, you should face discipline for that.
And herein lies the catch, right? Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. The way how it's reported, so obviously I'm like working with several filters that's separating me from the actual events. I wasn't there. But the way how it's reporting suggests to me that it could have been a rumor. They say that it was condemned. Who is they? Was it a workman that said? And even if a workman from Petrotrin or Heritage said, well, this line is being condemned, that is not official. So as you pointed out,
however,
who gave approval?
However, at the same time, knowing that some of these residents have stated that they've been there for 30 years, again, the regulatory bodies, town and country planning, local government approval, that also needs to be investigated. Whoever signed off on those approvals should also face disciplinary action.
Therein lies the frustration, because town and country.
The third part of it as well, in my eyes, you've got Heritage Petroleum as well, formerly Petrotrin. They're aware that these residents had built over the pipeline. And yet, because residents said when they were building, some officials from Petrotrin would come and tell them, you can't build there. But then nothing would be done about it. And so they'd continue their construction, which is ignorance. But Petrotrin and Heritage also did not enforce it. That is why all parties are guilty.
I thought, and maybe I read it wrong, but I thought it was a case where Petrotrin was enforcing it, but then the enforcement stopped. I read it differently, that at some point, the people coming out to tell people, no, you can't build here, that more or less just stopped. Now, whether or not Heritage had knowledge, what I think happened was the transition. This is a suspicion of mine, but this is based in part in part of what one caller who knows the industry said with regards to when they transitioned, they lost a lot of long-standing people with a lot of institutional knowledge, right? And they were replaced with maybe fresh, young, cheaper graduates or political appointees or what have you, right? The transition could have been where you lost the institutional knowledge, so the people who knew, not just that we have to do this job, but this specific situation is something that's ongoing that we have to monitor. And we lost that, we got new people in, who knows, maybe even the whole department that oversees this was downsized, replaced, or not even transitioned into Heritage. And I suspect, because they say Petrotrin officials came, but they said they never saw anybody from Heritage. So
and
in that respect, yes, I think Heritage is wrong.
I think that, one, you can't make any assumptions when it comes to construction, because bear in mind, because there was approval, that is how these residents got a water connection and an electricity connection.
Well, approval by?
Well, it would have been town and country and local government. That is precisely why they got an electricity and water connection, because we're making the assumption this morning, based off of what I'm seeing, that it is not illegal electricity or water connections. Furthermore, how are we going to go about solving this? Well, the residents clearly cannot go back there. But how do they receive compensation? Should they receive compensation? If you're saying that it was not enforced by Petrotrin or by Heritage, to a certain extent, liability lies on their part. Yeah. Because you should not be constructing near an oil pipeline or on top of an oil pipeline. According to one former engineer at Petrotrin who was speaking to a daily newspaper, that line was never condemned.
Yep.
When he was there, He was in charge and responsible for it, and it was never ever condemned. Residents are saying, well, for 30 years we thought it was condemned. So where does liability lie? Of course, on all parties. Where does compensation come from?
To some extent, the residents, if they don't have a good case as to why they reasonably thought that it was condemned, and hearsay from, even if it was a petrolstation worker, right? But that's not official. That to me is not good enough. If petrolstation had a release, if they had consultations, if somebody went into the offices and they got some sort of official notice of yes, which was then, that could explain where they got town and country approval, etc., etc. But to just say that other people were building on the line and we were told, who told you? You have to be able to say who told you in an official capacity.
As the point I was making previously is, where does the compensation come from? Because that is the whole story, that's the whole argument being made now. I understand that the residents, according to the Minister of Finance, are being actually accommodated at Paris Suites. I know this is going to sound heartless, even though the part responsibility lies on Petrol and Heritage. It's going to be hard for these families to start over, but I don't necessarily see them having to be compensated. To me, more of the responsibility lies on their part, because they were aware that the pipeline was there. Now, if you want to make the argument because they got local government and town and country approval, that's a completely different story. Mere fact is, now they're going to need some assistance to relocate. Now they're going to need some assistance to move. Now they're going to need some more assistance to build. And this is a loss, obviously, for everybody here in TNT, because our monies are going into facilitating this. Furthermore, what has me absolutely upset and what has me absolutely crushed is the mere fact that the inefficiencies of those in charge, the authorities, those in charge, the regulatory bodies, they have not done their responsibility. They have not done their part. Yet it is taxpayers' dollars that are going to go in to correcting the situation.
And therein lies the problem. We can't separate necessarily heritage and taxpayers, because the profits earned by heritage, the revenue earned by heritage, is either in theory going to be reinvested into a state entity or made use of by the state in some form or another. So it's not as though, maybe with an entity like TSCT, but even then, it's a state entity, so for all intents and purposes, it is state money. There's an interesting part of this where one of the reports said that the family, I'm not too sure if it's the family with the garage where the breach was, I think. They sold their house, and apparently their house may or may not, again, this is subject to the accuracy of the reporting, might have been in the same area. So now I want to know, they sold their house, they got money for that to move on the pipeline. Is it that they paid somebody for that land, or is it that they were squatting on that land and figured this was a way to re-up on their net worth? I'm not saying that that's what they did. I'm saying that also needs to be asked. Like, was this a smart move, or was it just that they thought, look, we're going to switch houses, and they were scammed and somebody sold them the land because somebody said, well, and maybe that's where the source of the line being condemned came from, the rumor.
No, that same family said they knew the pipeline was there. That same family said, we thought it was condemned.
Right.
So whether or not they were squatting on the land, or whether or not the land was sold to them, they knew about the pipeline before even moving onto that land.
No, well, my point is, especially if it was a case where they were looking to sell and then squat or kind of, claim land without...
Just bear in mind that land would also be, most likely, because of the direct running of the pipeline underneath it, would not be allowed for residential purposes.
Right.
So it's not that, I'm making the assumption again, because as you said, clarification, it's not like the land could be sold to them.
No, and that's why I said fraud.
Right.
That's why I said fraud.
But the family should be smarter than this, I think so. And that's why I'm saying all agencies, all parties, everybody involved needs to face disciplinary action.
See, my concern is if the family was trying to pull a fast one and then they get compensated, then that will just reward smart behavior.
Which is why I have said disciplinary action for all involved, and which is why I also said, though it may sound heartless in these instances, I don't see the need to compensate these families.
And here's why. It's not about this specific family. The problem is, and we have issues with town and country planning. This is not the first time we've said, where's town and country planning when we hear people build on flood zones. The problem is, if it was this isolated case and we've never had any situation remotely close to this, then a case could be made, well, exceptions could be made. But there are many cases potentially like this. It could be an oil pipeline, a flood zone. It could be uneven terrain or unsafe terrain, what have you, at the risk of landslides, etc. The government seems to be very unable to, with regards to enforcing its laws on where people can or cannot build their homes. And by giving compensation for these situations now, it will set a precedent that could take up liability when technically, the government is not approving, just not enforcing, right? And as you said, to some extent, where do we say that people cannot exercise their own judgment, do not bear their own personal responsibility? It's one thing if the government approved. And again, your questions with regards to where did they get the approval to then get electricity and water, etc., that also is a huge deal. But I don't like the precedent set. That's the problem, because there will be more cases like this. And even if these people are not taking advantage of a situation, others will take advantage of a situation.
Should they pay their own hotel bills? That's another question as well, because they're being housed in Paris suites. I don't know, maybe you can share your thoughts with us later on Talking Points after the 9 o'clock news. When we do open up the phone lines, we will have a question of the day for you. But at this point, there were a couple more stories to get into, but we do have to take a commercial break. When we return, we'll get into some more topics this morning. Stay tuned to Talking Points.
North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah, hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service to festival grounds Blashy shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here. Played here. Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Shogunas Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered,
the conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. only on WESN Content Capital.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch ultra-slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship Mac Bean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah, hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service to festival grounds Blashy shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here, played here. Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Shogunus Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.
Welcome back to Talking Points, and thank you for staying with us this morning. Sean and I welcome to the Wednesday edition of Talking Points the former Minister of Finance and Attorney at Law, Ms. Karen Yunus Teixeira. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning, Keaton. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning.
Sean, why are you looking so puzzled?
No, I'm not puzzled actually. I was now thinking, well, now we have a former Minister of Finance here once again to speak about the work of the current Minister of Finance. Oh boy,
dear me.
Wow, what could happen? I don't know. Let's see what fireworks could be engaged.
No fireworks. Just being fair and objective, hopefully.
Well, that's good actually, Karen. Mid-year budget review, allocations were made to the tune of, well, the supplementation and appropriation for fiscal 2022, $3,081,703,900. What are your thoughts on the presentation made by the Minister of Finance?
Okay, so I'll start by this because I myself had to go backwards. And I had a discussion with someone who's an economist. So I thought that, I said to them, well, you know, when they use it to mid-year review, it's really shorthand for speaking about the supplementary appropriation, but that is not correct. It's two things you're doing in the mid-year review. You're doing a supplementary appropriation, which I'll explain as former minister, and you're doing a mid-year review. They go hand in hand. Why is that? Because when our fiscal year, that is the government's fiscal year, usually starts in September. You can go as far as October, but it usually starts in September. and the circulars go out to the different ministries around April for them to see what their needs are. Obviously, they're not all going to be met. And so you meet with the individual ministries, their permanent secretaries, their technical staff, who all have budget requests. And many times, one of the considerations you look at, of course, is the strategic plan for the government. Is that a major, given the pie is a finite pie, what are your priorities for that year or ongoing year? Because just because you are required by law to go to the parliament and let the parliament and the people know how their money has been spent doesn't mean that the highway is finished in one fiscal year. So that's one of the things you will have to do, and they have to justify their position. Now, what we have always done, at least when I was there, and my understanding, the other government ministry, administrations of which I am a part at that time and before, is that we always took what you call a conservative position. And that really came from your technical staff. A whole floor above me was just your technical staff advising on revenue and therefore also what your expenditure was. And we fixed our revenue based on information that they would have gleaned, and we would always take a conservative position. Why? Because you don't know what is going to happen during the year. So it is better to go low so that at the mid-year review, the supplementary appropriation, you can tell the ministry, listen, right now, this is the position. But if things turn out to be better and our revenue position is better, we could supplement the appropriation to your ministry because things have taken the upside. So you generally take a conservative position, less than what the World Bank, whoever is saying what the prices are. And so that's why it's called a supplementary appropriation. But it's also called a mid-year review. So you're doing two things. You're supplementing appropriations to various ministries, which you think, whatever reason, should be given that additional appropriation of funds from the consolidated fund, which is where all monies go, except from the HSF and Infrastructural Development Fund. And then you give a review of the economy mid-year. And what was very telling, because I went back and looked back, I said, let me look back and see what we have done in the past. And in every single occasion that I looked back, you would get a mid-year review, which meant you would look at where the government had reached in relation to whatever projects, plans, etc. You would get a review of that. It's two different things. And what had happened this year, and which is why a lot of the chambers complained and a lot of the manufacturing associations complained, was that all he seemed to have focused on was VAT, the VAT issue, but not really. What's most importantly, giving no figures, no production figures, no price figures, for the most important thing for our economy still is energy. And just on that point, I do think, to his credit, I think he did listen. I hope he listened, because he calls in all these different associations. And they did recommend, I read it in the papers, that they recommended in giving back the VAT returns, which I think is in the vicinity of $4 billion, and only 1.6 billion has been paid back. But I can be corrected on that, but I believe that's the position. What they recommended is that the small and medium enterprises be first in line. And they say because they're the ones that are most cash-strapped. They're the ones whose businesses are closing down, and they're the ones having to let go staff. So if you want to build the economy, create the sustainable development, let's give them priority. So we would note that the minister did say that the first call will be anyone whose VAT return is $250,000 or less. And that is the thinking behind it. Very solid, good thinking, in my view. And then he said, then we're dealing with VAT. Well, with those in a better position. But they did complain about that. But what was very noteworthy, and what I think all the chambers and manufacturing sectors complained about, and rightfully so, which is what a mid-year review is supposed to do, we are an energy economy. We depend on the petrochemical industry. We depend on LNG. We depend on all those things. And he was silent on that.
Well, he did give some overall figures with regards, and in some cases, I think he gave a a definite figure on what their revenue shortfall was and then what it's expected to be coming up. And in both cases, it ended up being $1 billion. But I can't remember with regards to what specifics. And he obviously he did not go into a lot of the nitty-gritties with oil production and so forth and so forth, as well as future.
And what he did, which I have to point out too, and it's, you might call it, Minister, I'm going to be careful what I say, but I'll just try to say, it appears to one to be a sleight of hand. And I am not the author of that statement. Well, he didn't make a pronunciation on it, but he did leave it as a question. And that is, between 2020 and 2021, he, that is the minister, withdrew the equivalent of 6 billion TT from the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. The sixth withdrawal, he did, now you have to look at the HSF Act and the purpose of the HSF Act. And the Act is to deal with certain situations. One of them is contagion, emergent situations, because there's a heritage component and a stabilization component. It's very clear. What he did with the sixth withdrawal was he put it into the consolidated fund. I don't know if you noted that he said, boasted, maybe that's his style. You notice I didn't go to the HSF. I did not go to the HSF. Any shortfall of 3.8 billion, so you know you're getting a deficit budget. You know it's going to be a big deficit budget, right? Which is probably why you didn't want to give too much detail. 3.8 billion, we are borrowing, but we are not taking it out of the HSF. It's the consolidated fund and external borrowing. Yes, you are taking it out of the HSF because you put money from the HSF, which I don't think the legislation is very clear. You can take up to 1.25 billion in a year, but it's very clear the circumstances under which you do that. You don't take it to put it in the consolidated fund. And what the author of that article, I mean, I think I can call his name because he signed off on it, Anthony Wilson, said, has the HSF become part of the government's fiscal planning because you're using it as a fiscal tool, right? So I don't think people recognize that when he boasted that way about his taking out the consolidated fund, that he had taken money out of the HSF on the sixth occasion and put it in there. So when he's saying he's not going to the HSF, he is going to the HSF, but by a rather what is this, not circumlocution, very circumspect. No, not a direct route, you know?
Yes.
So it's not, it's another word, but anyhow, that escapes me now.
Yeah, I think the word I was thinking of was not the correct word either.
I know.
But I will know it starts with circum.
Yes.
Circum in it.
Karen, I wanted to ask you, given what you were suggesting, that usually you take a conservative approach, when you were in your time as Minister of Finance, a conservative approach was the best practice, put it that way, even with estimates given from the IMF and the World Bank. Given how Colm over the last 7 years has presented budgets and mid-year budget reviews and even spoken of the economy, and given that he's been very selective in what he is relating to the public, even with the IMF report, he was extremely selective in what he was stating, and he has always been very picky as to what he wants to highlight from the report and share with the public. Did we expect otherwise? I've not often heard of him speaking.
And when you say not otherwise, you mean by?
Did you expect him to take a conservative approach?
Well, a realistic one is a better word to use, because when I was in government, I was not the creator. The wheel wasn't invented by me. It was explained to me why we took that position, to give us wiggle room so that when the mid-year review came and you wanted to make supplementary appropriations, hopefully taking that conservative approach would have allowed the revenue to have increased during that period of time for you to be able to tell a ministry, look, we can't give you more than this now, but let's see how it turns out with these supplementary, how it turns out in the 6 months. And I want to say in regard to that, he pitched the price of oil at $92.50. Now, it is true, you have to remember, we don't go by an annual year. We go by a fiscal year. Mm-hmm. So our fiscal year is from September of 2022 to September 2023. So what's going on in the annual year, you can look at what's going on there because it's going to assist your technocrats and yourself in determining what would be a reasonable price for oil and gas. And oil had reached 116 in June, July, but it went on a downward trajectory. I don't know if that's not an oxymoron, but by the time he delivered the budget in September, oil prices had dropped about $89. And it wasn't a blip anything, it was going down so how could you possibly, and you know one of the reasons they say is because he didn't want to put money in the HSF, because once the price is 10% over what your revenue budget is, you have to put at least 60% of that additional revenue into the HSF, and it doesn't come out. Well, it came out, and how he got it out. And similarly with gas, the trends were showing whilst gas had reached $7 and $8, it was on a downward trajectory. And all the geopolitics, which I know we have to take a break now, would have indicated to the minister that there was nothing to support his very optimistic view, talk about World Bank and everybody, when every indication was that prices were on the downward trend, and it did, and that's exactly what happened.
Well, we have to take a break, but my next question would have been, and maybe you can answer this after, is when you take a look at the supplementation and the allocations, if you broke it down, you know, is it that the Minister of Finance is trying to use the justification? He himself has said, you know, we've recovered from the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes, from COVID.
You know?
He said something else
And
there.
he is touting that our economy is very much back on track and on the way.
He said something else there that will amuse you, Karen, because you have called him out on the very same thing that he has said just yesterday in the continuation of the debates with regards to the supplementation. So I also want to get into that when we come back.
So we just have to take a quick break, but upon our return, the conversation about the mid-year budget review continues with the former Minister of Finance, Karen Eunice. Stay tuned to Talking Point.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order, or visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Welcome back to Talking Point. I heard in my ears coming back to Karen, and then I saw myself on the screen. Do I take that as a privilege and honor, or do I look like Karen? Are we insulting Karen or complimenting Keaton? What is this? Anyway.
We are complimenting each other.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you. You seem good lawyer. But anyway, my question now with regards to the supplementation. The Minister of Finance has touted, our economy has more or less recovered from COVID-19, and we're doing well. And if I may, not his direct quote, but just based off of what he stood up and said, we're doing exceptionally well. So, is he using that as a justification then for not even letting us know, okay, you know what, this is what we're going to invest in, this is how we're going to generate revenue. Don't worry about that. We have enough money to spend here.
Well, my hopefully short answer to that is he must be doing so exceptionally well that he has to, apart from what he had expended based on his revenue predictions, which have all turned out not to be correct, because he said that natural gas, which is what we are, a natural gas country, the production is, the Prime Minister said it, we would have 2.8, we're lucky if we reach 2.8, and what we needed is 4.1 billion cubic feet a day. So maybe he knows something I don't know, and maybe that's why he wanted to go and get 3.8 billion to supplement his revenue expenditure, because we're doing so well. So I'm not going to go by what he says, because he's gotten it wrong every single time on revenue, expenditure, deficit, and growth. And so, but I have to say, in fairness to him, but this is only in fairness to him, as the minister and as part of the government, you certainly don't want to be Debbie Downer, because what you want, the key to any economy is confidence. So we need to have confidence. Whether we could have confidence in him, given the many times that he has given information that has not only been incorrect, but has been incorrect in a way that it is not positive towards the country. So he's lost a lot of, Minister, don't be offended, it's not personal, but you lost a lot of credibility. That's the best way I'll say it.
I'll follow up on that after the news break. But
I was just going to say, thank God he's not doing engineering anymore, because if we use
you had to pay a lot of money the other day, you know that?
If we use his calculation, I know, if we use his calculations to build anything else again, then...
No, but you know what, in the stadium in Grenada with NH,
yep.
And they had all that money holding back. You know, in the end of the day, Privy Council said he had to pay the money.
Yep.
Just a quick observation, Karen, your point about the lack of natural gas production, government seems to be trying to compensate with renewables, and perhaps this is Stuart Young's trip right now to the US. It could be because they're trying to compensate with regards to our energy production. But
just let me just say this. I know, okay, because you're not going to be here tomorrow.
Okay, but it's your topic next.
Yeah, but I have to say this because no, because this is important. Maduro, I read it yesterday. Whilst Maduro is continuing with the oil and selling oil, his attention has now been turned to natural gas. His attention has been turned to supplying Eni in Italy and Repsol in Spain with natural gas. Now, apart from all the developments that we are aware of, what that is saying to Trinidad, which was dependent, and by the way, the IMF report, the central bank report, without using the word dragon field, all their projections have been based on increased production, which has to be coming from the dragon field, because the Lauren Manatee will not give you the gas until about 2020. And as Kevin Ramner, right, Colibri, De Novo Zanduli, Cassia C, and there's another one. All of them, Matapal,
yeah.
All of them give you no more than 400 million, 250 to 400 million. That is nowhere near. And our problem is that is why, when you looked at the growth from the central bank, they said that the manufacturing sector, which would include things like, I think, ammonia and stuff like that, had grown by 10.5%. But you know what energy are they? Negative 2.5. So you have to figure to yourself, if the price of natural gas, which is what we really depend on, was so high, it means the production was not there.
RIC, I'm saying it, I know people didn't like it when I said it the first time, but I feel RIC does want to raise your rates. That's all part of compensating for the future reality. But moving on, with regards to the Brent Thomas case, you did mention something quick to me yesterday with regards to the grounds for the appeal. You're not necessarily disagreeing with the appeal.
No.
So, and this is a part with all of the bubble that people might have forgotten. So if you could...
Yeah, because what the Brent Thomas, as I know people would, we aren't going all back, but Brent Thomas is also a licensed firearm dealer, and he can train and so on, so he has all the requisite authority which was granted to him. And the whole issue was that the police, and it was headed by one officer in particular, who it seemed executing warrant after warrant after warrant after warrant. And this is where we reached the point that, of contention. On October the 2nd, after having him in jail for how many days, Quinlan Williams issued a habeas corpus to let him go. And on the 3rd of October, he jumped on a plane to Barbados, supposedly on his way to the United States. The problem with the government was that they went to the DPP. DPP did not tell them what to do, but they said to them, the final advice they gave was the 4th. Now, by the 4th of October, he was not in the country. So what you really should have used was extradition. They backdated the advice to the 3rd of October. And in order, yes, they backdated it today. And notice what the judge said. I'm not saying it, as the judge said it. They backdated the advice to the 3rd of October. And he said clearly to avoid using extradition, because extradition procedure is a far more detailed thing, and governments and ministries have to get involved. So
could they do that, by the way?
Backdating
it?
No.
I tell you what they did.
I'm pretty sure the answer to
I'm
that
telling
is,
you what they did.
I'm not a lawyer, so no.
I know it may come across as a rhetorical question, but you know, just
they did. This is what the ministers and the judge said. He said that they even though the final George Busby was the one they went to, and he gave no definitive position. And it's only on the 4th he did give, he didn't even say, he said, well, based on what you're giving me there, yes, you could charge him. But they found out that he had left the country since the 3rd of October, and he was in Barbados. And the judge said that they backdated the advice from the DPP's office to the 3rd of October, clearly to avoid taking extradition proceedings. I'm just telling you what he said.
Right, yeah, but...
So now the point would be now, when he came back home, when he went to Barbados, as you know, he was in his room, police came there with all of the, whatever you all call those big, right, and they bullet vests and so on. And according to him, they told him that he was under arrest. They took him in a van and they brought him to the tarmac, and he was handed over to a non-commercial flight. So we don't know, but a non-commercial flight. And having done that, he brought an action, and this is where the Attorney General has based most of his appeal grounds. He is saying that, there is a point to what he is saying. He is saying that in making his application, he relied on a breach or infringement of his constitutional rights. Taking into custody, no valid grounds, etc., and freedom of movement, all the things that go under the Constitution. But what the AG is saying, those alleged unconstitutional actions occurred in Barbados. It did not occur because they didn't tell him what he was being arrested for, all of that. It happened in Barbados. And he's saying that a constitution applies to the country where the constitutional rights have been infringed. And the constitutional rights that he says that have been infringed did not occur in Trinidad, but it occurred in Barbados. And they quoted a case called Rehape as authority for saying that a similar thing had happened in the BVI, where the Canadians went there for a money laundering case, and they were relying on the charter, which is equivalent to our Constitution, and they were not successful as the police, because the police, they said, in the Turks and Caicos Islands, they said because all what you did, even though it was done in conformity with the Turks and Caicos laws and all of that, you cannot apply the charter, People's Charter of Canada, extraterritorially. But the judge didn't know that was his, that was going to be his challenge. So he did say that there are exceptions to that rule, and he distinguished the Rehape, which we're not going to go into, with the situation with Brent Thomas, and said in those circumstances, even that case acknowledged that you can say that even though the unconstitutional actions occurred in another jurisdiction, you can apply it if you come within those exceptions. And that's what the judge did. And this is what the Attorney General is challenging. He is challenging the fact that the acts of which he complained occurred extraterritorially, and therefore you could not apply the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago to Barbados. He also said that if he had a complaint against the police and the way they handled it, you don't go to the Constitution, you go to judicial review, saying that the actions of the police will ultra-virus their powers. You don't jump to the Constitution. They also said that they were of the view that the judge seemed to be willing to accept Brent Thomas's version of what happened, and did not take a rounded view of all the things. But I think the strongest point is the fact, I think, that that the actions, the alleged unconstitutional actions, did not occur in Trinidad. They occurred in Barbados, and that's the rule. And that if they needed to do anything, the right thing would have been an extradition. What you looking very confused?
No, I'm just wondering, as much as the AG said that the judge seemed to have wanted to take on...
I hope the thing is on Keaton, eh?
Want to have taken Brent Thomas' version of events. If I think it's reasonable, the judge should look at what's going on and seeing how the case was handled, I can't fault the judge for wanting to, take what the police say with a pinch of salt at that point.
Yeah, but that's not the key. That is why.
Right, yes.
Just now I said, don't forget about the lawyer part, but I think you have to really leave it. I think you have to leave it in.
But Karen, as much as this appeal might actually work for the AG.
I don't know if it will.
You're right, but it might. Doesn't Brent Thomas, though, didn't the AG more or less still spell out, well, look, you went down the wrong path, but if you take the right path.
What was the wrong path, though?
When he said that you need to go, was it judicial review? No, for the police, if you have a complaint with the police.
Yeah, but most of the unconstitutional behavior occurred in Barbados, not so much in Trinidad. So even if he went the judicial review role, he would have been limited to acts in Trinidad, and he wanted to do. And you notice that the Prime Minister went to Barbados that very same week, and you heard the AG admitting that we may not have done. Yes, and you notice the AG came out quickly and said, well, maybe we did some things that were not really correct. So we wait and listen to see how that pans
I'll tell you
out.
what, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break. When we return, we can ask our question, open up the phone line, and continue this discussion. We'll be right back after this.
Seven is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered,
the conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN Content Capital.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. only on WESN Content Capital.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing. We are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah, hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service to festival grounds, Blashy shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here, played here. Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Shogunas Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.
Welcome back to Talking Point. So let's get immediately into the question of the day. So the question actually stems from the first topic of which Sean and I discussed this morning. That is, Karen, by the way, that is with the oil spill in Faizabad.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yes, and the families located there. The question that we're asking you this morning is, based off of the discussion, based on what we know so far on the reporting, should the families who built residences over an oil pipeline in Faizabad receive compensation from the state? It's a little small on the screen, but should the families who built residences over an oil pipeline in Faizabad receive compensation from the state? That's the question I'm asking you this morning. 623-9376. If TSTT is good to us this morning, we can probably have phone calls from now until 9:27. If not, we go try our very best.
Our first caller from Shogunas. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning. It's
finally able to beat your sister.
Yes.
We talk about this media review, and we talk about a shortfall in revenue, but nobody say why there is a shortfall in revenue. And I have given you the answer on many occasions. The government make no attempt to collect the revenue, and other agencies like WASA and all those people, they have stopped from collecting revenue, or at least enforcing the law on collection of revenue. You talk about this pipeline issue down in South there, and it's the same reason. We have about a dozen government agencies, you called quite a few this morning, who are not doing their work. And they all have a minister, and they all supposed to put up annual administrative reports, which would issue this, and they don't. And the fault lies squarely on the head of the Prime Minister, because he is the one who's supposed to see this done. He criticized Kamala Prasad Bisesa for being 4 years behind in annual administrative reports, and now he is 6 years. How on earth some reputable agency could give you a doctorate in governance is beyond me.
They don't seem to understand what governance is, or maybe I don't. Any questions, gentlemen?
Yes, I have one question. Should the families who built residences over an oil pipeline in Faizabad receive compensation from the state?
No question of compensation and that. You don't get compensation under any law in Trinidad for unlawful acts. The fact that one government agency do something wrong, two wrongs don't make a right. I would like to see somebody put up, but the government have been paying compensation to all kinds of people. Long time when you have a flooding or whatever it is, you had an inquiry by the Works Department to see that it's government's fault. Now that don't happen. Anybody put in anything and they not politically at variance, they go out and pay them. That is the problem. The whole thing is the whole governance of this country have been destroyed by our politicians over the last 20 years.
All right, cool. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.
You're welcome. Bye.
Have a good day. All right, so because we have the one phone line, just bear in mind we aren't able to take multiple calls at the same time. So it's just one after the other. Call in now. The phone line is free. 623-9376. Question we're asking you: should the families who built residences over an oil pipeline in Faizabad receive compensation from the state? Good morning, caller from San Fernando.
Morning, gentlemen. Morning, Karen.
Good morning.
Morning.
Karen, was the word you're looking for, was it surreptitious?
No, I wouldn't use that because surreptitious also has a connotation of being deceitful and dishonest. So I wouldn't want to use that word.
Back to this question, I totally agree with the professor with respect to compensation. Right, my answer to the question. Now, Keaton, you spoke about, let me say this, you spoke about approvals by town and country approvals, remember in the beginning of the program? And let me say this to you. You do not need to go to ICNTT or WASA with town and country approvals to get a water connection or to get a ICNTT connection. You don't. And that is where local government reform needs to come in. I recently built another house, and I did not have to, as in previously, I did not have to take my town and country approval to when I did the applications to WASA and when I did the applications to ICNTT to get my connections. So that is something that is a misnomer. That is why people squatting and they could get water connection and they could get light connection.
Yep.
One other thing, that pipeline issue in Faizabad. Let me say this unequivocally. That pipeline issue was number 3 on a list of 16 items for urgent attention in Heritage. There's another one that is going to come up. Recently the Prime Minister turned the sword to 330 apartment buildings and the Cookie roundabouts in San Fernando. There is that project is being built by the Furnace. I think it's a bold project or something like that with the HTC. There is a pipeline running through that property. These Petrotrin pipelines. There's about 5 lines running through there. And one of the biggest issues right now is that construction is going on. And Heritage has an issue with that group because the issue is the pipeline needs to be removed and it is a hemming and hawing on who has to pay to remove that line. But in the meantime, construction is going on right where that line is running.
Crikey.
Because I pass it every day.
Wow.
And I can't believe that now within Heritage it is an issue. It is a serious issue. But the state seems to be able to circumvent whatever they need to do. Thank you.
I just want to say to that, when the person said, the professor, unequivocally, that the persons who built residences on the pipeline, I don't think it's as simple thing as one is making it out to be. Because I think if they go to the lawyer, there's also a responsibility on the government not to have allowed on them because that is their job.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
And that the fact that they allowed it and for so many years, and I think you're getting a call. So I don't think it's a straightforward issue, and I think your second caller alluded to that.
No, and I agree, because this morning when we were discussing it, I said all parties involved should should face disciplinary action because it's not as simplistic as it's being.
Right,
laid out.
and
Yeah,
the
you're
fact
right.
is the okay, you got a call.
Right.
All right. Well, let's take this call from Digger Martin. Good morning, caller.
Hi, morning.
Good morning.
I have two statements and a question.
One
is if the
moment, caller. Could we just close the talk,
Hello?
please? All right. Go ahead, caller.
Right. One, if the lines were placed on the people's property and then they built a house on their property.
That's not
But
what
something
the
had to be
report
done about
suggests.
that, and they had to go to court. Right. More important to me, Mrs. Teixeira, don't know if you're still carrying that name.
I am.
I would like to ask this question. All the millions of dollars that is paid to attorneys through the Attorney General's office, how do we identify what these attorneys are doing for those large sums of money?
And
Thank you.
Can I just say very quickly, that is an ongoing problem, not only under this administration, but the other one. But what concerns me when we were talking about the appropriation bill, the DPP has said the reason why he has not been able to fill many of the posts, unlike what has been said, is because he has been underfunded. And his funding comes from the AG because it falls under the Attorney General. So, you know, your question in terms of what attorneys paid, maybe we need some clarification from the appropriation bill as to how much of that 97 million is going to be given to the DPP so that he can actually have the funding to fill positions which are over 70 something.
I'm going to take this call first. After this call, I will read for you the details of expenditure as it relates to the Office of the Attorney General, where they were allocated 79 million for supplementary appropriation. But we have a caller on the line with us from Claxton Bay. Good morning, caller.
Morning, Sean. Morning, Keith. Morning, good lady there.
Good morning.
Morning.
My answer to the question is, who's owning the property?
Mm-hmm.
If it's private property or the company's property. But, I want to ask a question, though. How much of the Coast Guard boat is in operation?
I can't
and
tell
then,
you off the top of my head.
again, who is headed for the, you call it, I forget the word, safe guy. Maybe tomorrow I'll call back. For the question I really want to ask.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do have a
Thank
good day.
you.
So, according to the document released by the Ministry of Finance and signed for by the Minister of Finance, 79 million was allocated to the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Legal Affairs. Details of expenditure. For the payment of the acquisition of polymer certificates, officers employed on contract, arrears of salary due to revised terms and conditions of employment, short-term employment, fees for attorneys and accounts and gratuity payments, and under the development program, the Office of the AG is getting a further 16.5 million for the information management systems and the Register General's Department, dealing with land registry, companies registry, and so on. So, nothing specific.
No, nothing specific.
And nothing that says DPP.
Yeah,
Precisely.
and I think we needed to see that.
Yeah. We'll be taking this call now from Arima. Good morning.
Morning, panel.
Good morning.
Quickly. So for 30 years, people living in a place, and this pipeline in existence, and crazy enough to build on it. I don't believe that. Secondly, concerning the Minister of Finance. Now, this is 60 cents in the government dollars for transfers and subsidies. 20 cents is for development. I would like to see that development be more scattered across Trinidad and Tobago, and local government be given more money, because when I listen to Tawakit MP complain about what happened in the back there, that is sounding too good. Because every minute Tobago crying and they getting fed. Furthermore, on this same topic with the economy, we implemented IMF policies without going to the IMF. And I don't agree with it, because we the people whose money is being spent, we're not seeing any improvements in our lives. And we're talking about the economy getting better. So while the grass is growing, the horses and the animals starving. Have a good day, people.
Can
How
I
are
just
we gonna-
say on that point with the IMF, you know, the IMF really tries, and it was a good point made to me, that unless a country is in a situation like Jamaica found itself, or many what they so-called underdeveloped countries, they generally want to be careful in their criticism, but they did say it's about time that the CSO gets more up-to-date information.
Yes.
We need a National Statistical
Fully
Institute,
agreed. Yep.
and they did talk about development of the economy, diversification. So they did, but they were careful because they're not, their role is not their surveillance, monitoring, lending, and we're not borrowing.
Yeah. No, I fully agree with that, actually. Let me remind you of the question just before we take this call. Should the families who built residences over an oil pipeline in Faisabad receive compensation from the state? We've had very many answers this morning, and a question for you along similar lines. Good morning, caller from Tunapuna. Hello.
Good morning, gentlemen and lady.
Good morning.
I in respect of the oil link, I believe that relocation or compensation, either one. Either one.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Let me touch a little bit on the shortfall. The shortfall of, according to the Minister of Finance, when they came into office in 2016, are coming back with the same thing again. They met 516,000 people who were contributing to NIS. 3 years after that, before COVID, 112,000 people no longer could have been paying NIS because they had lost their jobs. So we had a reduction of over 112,000 people in this country losing their job under Mr. Imbert and Rowley's first 3 years before COVID. They happen now to just carry it up in the last year to 454,000 people from what they bring it from 516 to 404. They now just take the rest of the years up to last year to carry it to 455,000. Not saying that all is well. All these people who open back their business, they are having a hard time. Most of them are ready to close back down. So they have created that environment where we have over 100,000 people lose their job when these people came into office in 2016. So there's where all the shortfall coming from, the unemployment, and definitely if it's so many people cannot afford to pay NIS, there's a shortfall there too. So this is where the problem emanates from: unemployment, shortage of funds, what they're supposed to collect from NIS, and all these other things. It's chaos they're causing.
All right, caller.
Nobody can come and say, no, everything is all right, this pandemic done. This pandemic did not cause what I spoke about just now.
Okay, caller.
Karen is going to just respond to what you're suggesting. Thank you very much.
One thing, let's start with the oil leak. That's why I'm saying it's not so simple, because if there was proper maintenance of that oil line over those years, that should not have happened.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some level.
Well, they're building on the pipe. I think at
Yeah,
least
but
a structure was on the pipe.
First of all, building on the pipe and allowing it to, and I don't think the pipe is exactly above ground. I don't think it is. I think it's deep under. But what I'm saying is there has to be some level of negligence in the maintenance of those pipelines and the fact that people were allowed to build on it and not move from there. So that's the first point. The second point with the NIS is a problem all over the world. You saw what's happening in France.
Mm-hmm.
They keep rioting because they're moving it from, I think, want to move it. I have moved it from to 62 to 64 or something like that. All countries are doing it, and the reason is much more than what you have said. It is because we have an aging population. The actuarial studies show that they're living much longer, and the young people are not having as many children. So it is not a simple answer. But I will say to you, you have made a good point, because if you go back to the statistics before 2020, Trinidad's economy
Yes.
was in a mess at that time, so we couldn't blame it on COVID. But
No.
they're going to have to move the NIS up. They're going to have to do that. They're going to have to increase the subsidy. They cannot continue with that. That's my opinion on that. They're going to have a more targeted approach for persons on social programs, such as what you are saying. And when that is a reality that is facing nearly every country with an NIS program.
623-9376. That's the number, 623-9376. We have time for one more phone call. Not from Karen's phone. We're not taking call this.
Definitely not.
One thing, caller, I understand what you're saying, but we do also have to remember the fact that yes, it was before COVID. Yes, it was the current administration. However, revenues due to falling energy prices significantly. That's what the country was facing. We had an issue with regards to foreign exchange. We had an issue with regard to energy revenues. To what extent is that the government's fault? Because those revenues, I know.
Where is the government fault? Lack of diversification.
Right.
All those people she's talking about. Why did we create
if you want to
avenues?
talk about the first 3 years of our administration, I can't say, well, where's the
Excuse me, the PNM is around since 1956.
Well, fair enough, but I'm giving this administration to some extent, although the Prime Minister was there and the Minister of Finance was there, you're right.
In when? In 2000
all of the
even
times,
I was
yes,
there.
that is true.
Please don't make that excuse for them. Please.
So there's the long-term issues, but the short-term issues
No
was
vision
because
and no mission.
We have a call on the line?
Yes, last caller for the morning. Good morning, caller from Digger Martin.
You should scrap the 20PT.
Morning again, City 5.
Morning
this
again.
Is a callback, right? Because the question I asked Mrs. Cheryl.
Oh, me.
What I'm trying to understand is a lawyer is being paid, let's say, $5 million to do some sort of a contractual arrangement. I guess most likely is a consultation as to guide the Attorney General's office, as the case may be. Right? To me, the sum as a citizen, right? And in no way am I politically affiliated. I hate politicians.
I'm sorry.
Listen, everybody's a politician at
Yeah.
heart.
I'm sorry.
No, gosh, guys. Well, let
Quick
me
caller.
Mrs. Fisher, because
Quick caller.
But anyway, what I was asking is the money being paid to these firms, right? Is there a balance in relation to the quality of service that they are giving? Is there value?
Well,
That's what I'm asking.
Okay, so what I will answer, based on my observation, which may not be correct, but I think it's pretty correct. A lot of consultations, a lot of legal opinions are given out when it is not necessary. They have very well-trained staff inside there, and it is their way of paying you back. In my respectful opinion, there are a lot of them that I've seen, and so why do you need 2 and 3 people to tell you what your department can easily give you and paying out the kinds of huge sums that we're seeing? So yes, that is a big problem that continues, and that I think it needs to be more transparent, because what people may not realize is you find out what they get by chance, what they get to give this opinion which appears in the papers, but there are a lot of them on an equivalent of a retainer, and every month they are getting X amount of money, and for what? And all these government departments have legal officers, and the Attorney General's office has very skilled persons. And in my respectful opinion, a lot of their thing is paying back for your loyalty to them. And that's not just this government, that is something that is happened in the other government.
That is why I said, when the Attorney General said with regards to one aspect of the Brent Thomas appeal, he said, in my judgment, he did not say by the advice of senior counsel, and I was happy to hear that, at least, in one specific instance, that we didn't spend money on an opinion.
You sure?
Yeah, but it's done. Yes, you better say.
Well, No, I just said in one specific instance,
you don't.
right? He might have still gotten an opinion from.
You better believe
fair
that.
Enough, fair
and
enough.
Attorney General, we are not saying so.
I was trying to get
experience.
AJ, I was trying to give you benefit of the doubt, but these two poo-poo in my benefit of the doubt.
What?
Just saying.
Doing what?
Just saying they poo-poo in my benefit of the doubt.
Poo-poo in?
Yes, you're poo-poo
No,
in.
we're giving you a reality check. And guess
Well-
what? And guess what? One of them giving you a reality check is one who I didn't teach him. We were in class together.
Finally, we found a lawyer Karen did not teach.
No, but I know him personally. And apart from that, I was in government. So don't say that. Don't say that. Anyway, okay.
Sorry, it's the use of that word.
Poo-poo?
Yeah, poo-poo.
Not a word that we should use on air, Sean.
Exactly.
I don't know what, Sean.
We've used
Yeah, well, we're not using it.
All right, fair enough.
This has been Talking Point on WESN Content Capital.
Tell us sorry. Have him tell us sorry.
If you can get Sean to say sorry, Karen.
Actually, there's something else I want to say, but Keaton is wrapping up the show.
Karen, yes, sure. Thank you very much for your time and your presence once more this morning. Always a pleasure to have you with us.
Always a pleasure to be with you all.
Sean Michael Small, have a good day, sir.
I would just like to say, without going into too much detail, the Minister of Finance was reported about, he made comments about the use of nominal GDP.
Oh, yes,
and
true.
We didn't get into it. All I will say, folks, it's statements like that, and I'll be happy to elaborate at a later point. Statements like that makes me wonder about his command over the subject of economics.
He has a very good command, and he knows what he wants to say. Anyway, you're getting Keaton telling us
Karen,
stop.
You stay there for 1 second.
Yeah.
We'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye, folks.